Hi guys, Harry Sunday here, letting you know that there's a apparel company that supports the game that you love. It's called There Is Only One Football.com, guys. They've got all sorts of stuff from caps, t-shirts, water bottles, all sorts of accessories, even for your mobile phone. All that sporting stuff you can wear anywhere you want to wear it, guys. That's right. And don't forget the website it's on, thereisonlyonefootball.com.
There is only one football!
Time again, we are live again, guys. The only show that shows the game and showcases the game in Australia. Footballers is live around the world, guys, from Greece to Morocco, wherever you want to be, the USA, UK, we're everywhere, even in Italy tonight, of course. Even in Italy, we can't let that go, guys. Here we go, hop, check it out, hop, feel it. Here we go. The cup of life, this is the one. Now is the time, don't ever stop. We should've known, gotta be strong. We should've known, right from the top. And when you feel the heat, the world is at your feet. No one can hold you back if you really want it, Kenny Wilson. I see it in your eyes, you want the cup of life. Not today's here, you're gonna get it. Do you really want it? Here we go, Carlos. Here we go. Ali, Ali, Ali. Good. Yes, Mr. Of course, Mr. Socceroo Dad. And of course, all the way right now from Italy, the Naples, the master of Naples. There we go, Mr. Picca, Angelo, Picca, guys. Football, this is like the guys. We are the people. We are the passion. It's all happening tonight, guys. We are the passion. We are the people. It's my way, the highway, gentlemen. Tonight, guys, we've got a massive show tonight. Of course, we want to talk about Adelaide United, who started in the first instance in the NSL. We got Mr. Angelo Picca from Italy. We've got Carlos, of course, the Lone Ranger. We've got the Socceroo Dad, Mr. Tony Goodwin. And, of course, great Scott, it's Kenny Wilson. Well done, boys. Oh, my God, it's that sort of show tonight, guys, where a lot of people are watching and we've got a special guest watching and we've got to be very good tonight because don't forget, we've got an ex-headmaster on board here right now, Carlos Bielli, the Lone Ranger. He'll pull us up. Is that right, Carlos?
The tension with me will be painful.
What was it like you being a headmaster? Did you give the strap or what?
No, I was a school teacher. I wasn't a headmaster. I was a school teacher.
Oh, boy, you look like a bloody headmaster the way you look, Carlos.
The tension with me will be painful.
Oh, my God, guys. Oh, I got to put the laughing on it. Unbelievable, gentlemen. Well, guys, tonight marks a special day for us because we're going to be talking about Adelaide United, Of course, we've got Angelo Picca from Italy. Of course, he was one of the CEOs there, marketing manager. Angelo, this was an amazing feat for you because apparently Adelaide City had fallen over, and of course, before that, it was also West Adelaide had fallen over, and there was no team. There was no team in Adelaide for the NSL at the time. So what did you do? Did you panic? Did you have to do something quickly?
Well, it's actually brings back a lot of memories. You know, it was a very tough time because there was a great deal of uncertainty as to whether South Australia would have a team.
Yep.
Bob Datavi pulled out. I think it was 2nd of August, and we were given 6 weeks to put a team together.
6 weeks.
And obviously, the fastest thing to do it. Yeah, 6 weeks. Obviously, if we went over that, Adelaide would not have a team in the NSL. You know, in the history since 1977. But what happened was we put everything together with a sponsor, Gordon Pickard, the Pickard Foundation, and obviously having the funds helped a lot. And then we took the contracts, all of the contracts of the players that Adelaide City had. We took the whole squad. And obviously, because otherwise there could have been a very, very terrible thing, you know, for the players. And then they would have gone to the commission. You know, that was the sort of negative side. The positive side is that we took all of the contract, we assumed all of the players, and we formed the team, put the team on the sheet, and also lodged a submission with the financial guarantees. And the rest of it's history. You know, it was a phenomenal year in that we had sellout crowds. We had 12 home games where we sold out 7 out of the 12 games. And the very first game against Brisbane was an historic moment where we had 17,000 people at Hindmarsh, capacity 16. I don't know how 17 fitted there. And we also had a giant screen outside the stadium with another 2,500 people. So we actually blew everybody apart. Everybody was shocked, but everybody had this great appeal to Adelaide United because Adelaide United had the South Australian colours. It was truly representative of state of South Australia. And we actually went to the heartland of football, you know, because people wanted to relate to a team that had the South Australian colours. No disrespect to Adelaide Juventus or West Adelaide, but this was an Australianised, South Australianised sort of entity that the Croatians went to the game, the Greeks, Italians, people of all sort of cultural background. It really united the whole of the soccer fraternity. That's why we called it Adelaide United. Adelaide Unites, and I think the headlines were the first game was Adelaide Unites football.
Absolutely
amazing. It was phenomenal. It was amazing.
Angelo, can I just stop you there for a sec? Can I just say, what was the bad blood between Adelaide City because they fell over, they didn't want to be in the NSL at the time? I mean, did they have something going on? Of course, you were involved there as well. Were they really upset in any way or of basically being not being there anymore? What was the problem that they actually fell over? Can you tell us that problem?
Well, I don't think they were totally happy, you know, that they were totally surprised that we actually made it, you know, and we actually fielded the team and we were actually affiliated with the federation. And they were surprised that we got everything together so quickly. But, of course, when you get the finance, you get budgets and, you know, like wages and then marketing budgets and all that sort of thing. But we were very good, you know, with the whole of the community, but because we invited the board of Adelaide City, the board of West Adelaide, and everybody. We were obviously we knew they were hurt into failing to post a team, and we invited them with all the, you know, the goodness in our hearts, you know, but they never turned up. But, you know, we had no disrespect with the people and how they did things in the past. Obviously, you know, like the foundation of the league, and Kenny Wilson would budge for this, you know, like the old NSL, the Phillips League. If it wasn't for those people, you know, like that started the national competition, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have the A-League. You know, obviously, out of the goodness of their heart, you know, there was a lot of volunteers. But the A-League actually, you know, they were actually at a different criteria. You had to have a totally professional setup. We're going to talk about the second tier competition later, the criteria.
Yes, exactly, yes.
You need to have professional people, a certain amount of people that need to be full-time. The players need to be full-time. And obviously the old concept, the old NSL, although they had some fantastic players, some of the organisational structures were semi-professional. You had lots of volunteers and then some full-time people, whereas the A-League demands more full-time people and less volunteers. So look, to be honest with you, they weren't really happy, but we tried the hardest to bring them on board and say, look, we did this for South Australia. We didn't do this to disrespect to anybody. But obviously it was very tough. A lot of those people were hurt that the team, Adelaide City, failed, and they didn't have the finance to fill the team that year. And we got on board with a South Australian brand. It was a brand new concept and a brand that everybody could be affiliated with. And, I think Tony would understand now the Adelaide United today that was born 20 years ago, the 2nd of September, was born the 2nd of September. We played the first game in October. And, of course, Carl Veart scored the first goal in the history. He took that football. I don't know what's happened to that soccer ball, but that's an history-making soccer ball. He scored the very first goal for Adelaide United. And, I think the South Australian concept was a winner because, as you guys know, we need to Australianise the brand. Now, the second-tier competition is going to take on board a lot of those teams like South Melbourne and Adelaide City, and they have that sort of like cultural background, the origin, Italians, Greek, and we need those people. We need to unite the sport. We need everybody, and uniting the sport is one of the biggest topics today, and we can talk about that later on.
Exactly.
When we want to do things, if we unite as football, we are the most powerful sport in Australia. There's no doubt.
Exactly. Now, let me bring Tony. Now, you showed us that photograph there, Tony. Now, you've got to read some names. That was the first team, is that right? That was the first team. Is there any names there at all that you can see? You recognise these players?
I know exactly who they are, but there's a ticket in the bottom corner there, which is the ticket for the first game. I actually got Carl and Ross Aloisi to sign that. Because Carl also scored the first goal, like Angelo mentioned, first goal for the NSL, also the first goal for the A-League when it became official.
Gee, amazing.
So
Tony,
which is great. And at that game, Craig was 11 years old.
Oh, my God.
At the northern ends, just left for the goal. And to think that he was a little kid there looking at those guys in total awe, and now he's in the opposite role. It's crazy.
Unbelievable. Now, of course, Tony, you were at the game. Is that right? You were at the game, the first game.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of people there, the atmosphere. How did the South Australian crowd take it an entity, a united entity, rather than having, of course, the ethnic clubs, a united entity? So, what was it like? Was there anything very special for the first game? What was it like?
The atmosphere was, I'd liken it to like being at a World Cup. It was just the most electric atmosphere. Like Angelo mentioned, it took the best of what Adelaide City and West Adelaide had to offer back in the NSL when they're at their height, and I know what that was like. So I've been to both clubs' games when it was at their best, and to see it on that night and the atmosphere and the way the crowd reacted when those players went out for the first time, and the psycho atmosphere when Carl scored that goal. It captured everything that the game has to offer.
So I'll bring Carlos on because Carlos would remembered Adelaide United at the time coming through. Of course, that was it. Of course, we're talking about NSL here right now, guys out there. NSL, which we are part of the NSL. Our history is part of the NSL. Carlos, what did you think? A united team finally in South Australia?
Well, at that time, this is what the public wanted to have. A team that had no allegiance to a European country because of what has happened in the past. Because a lot of people felt threatened, perhaps, by going to a Sydney-Croatia game when there was music in Croatian and half the announcements in Croatian, and you felt you were not included. So
yes,
Adelaide United, Sydney, he was right. People were wanting quality football. We have been starved of football for over 12 months when the NSL disbanded, and there was no baggage. So people joined the new team because there was no baggage. It was a new entity, new adventure. Sydney thrived, Newcastle thrived, and that's what it was. It was a new entity, no baggage from the past, and anyone could identify where, no matter what your surname was.
Exactly. Now, Kenny, were you involved at that time at Northern Spirit? Were you there at Northern Spirit at the time when you were playing them?
No, well, sort of. I mean, I sort of used to go to all the games, and Laurie was there, and
Yes.
Davey Mitchell. All the boys were there. So
Yes.
I sort of was quite, had sort of an inside running of what was going on there, and that was great. I mean, Northern Spirit was fantastic, and look, they played at North Sydney Oval, which is certainly not a perfect soccer pitch, but the atmosphere on a Friday night there was amazing. 7, 8, 9,000. In that oval packed. It reminded me of Pratton Park with Olympic, to be honest.
Oh boy,
very, very similar. It was great. It was great, but it was a bit like the NSL. When the NSL started, and I say this to people, from 77 to 83, it was fantastic. The minute they zoned it from 84 and divided it up, it never became a national league anymore for me. It became like an individual super leagues with the certain groups, South Australia and Victoria meeting Queensland and New South Wales later on. So it was never the same and for me, and I was still playing then. It never felt the same. It felt like we were playing back in a sort of super state league. But in the 70s, I mean, I've mentioned it before. I mean, we held the record there. I think, they announced 19,000, but it was probably 25 or 26,000 that we got against Newcastle KB in 78 and 78, 79, it may have been 79 actually. And it was, KB had, they had Alan Best as their coach at the time. You went there, they had caravans selling photographs of the players with autographs and strips, and they had it like done it pat. It was amazing. And it was great, and the ethnic teams, I mean, they were all ethnic teams, but predominantly, the Greek and the Italian teams, there was a great atmosphere and a great, a sort of great environment. But all things comes to pass. And
yes.
Similar things are happening with A-League now. It's starting to run out of steam. It's sort of, it's got to a stage where they've got to take a direction and kick on and do something drastic to maintain, I suppose, the early stuff when it started.
Yes.
That early 2005 to 2010, there was such an excitement. But it's sort of, a lot. I mean, we've got too many teams that have run out of gas. Newcastle, Brisbane, Perth, Macarthur, and probably Western United, they're not really offering anything anymore, are they?
Yep.
I mean,
but the big thing, Kenny, you're saying here is that, but the thing is, Adelaide keeps pushing on and on and on. After the NSL, they came into, and of course, let me get to Angelo in a minute. But of course, Kenny, you saw
one club in Adelaide. It makes a difference.
It's a massive difference, isn't it? That's
one
right.
Club
yes.
in Adelaide, and it makes a huge difference. Whereas in Sydney, we've got, well, if you include Newcastle, we've got 4 or 5 teams there, that are predominantly drawing. You've got the Wanderers, you've got Macarthur, you've got Sydney FC, the Mariners in Newcastle, pretty much drawing, from, Greater Sydney, really.
Exactly.
I mean, I know the Central Coast is there, but predominantly, I know a lot of people that go from Sydney up to watch the Central Coast Mariners. I mean, I go to a lot of games up there. Yeah, look, it's there's certain pockets that you look and you go, and you look at Adelaide, and that's why there's a vitality about them. There's an excitement about them, and it goes hand in hand with what's happening. And you look at the tired teams. Perth ran out of gas. That ran its cycle. It sort of hit a brick wall, and it was band-aiding to fix it. Newcastle band-aiding to fix it. So they've got to do something dramatic to re-energise 5 or 6 teams.
Yes,
there's
yes,
probably
yes.
more teams than what I was saying, but
Yep.
anyway.
So what I'll go, Angelo, is to you right now. The year that they started in the NSL, of course, was it 2002? Am I saying 2002, or was it earlier in the NSL?
2003.
2003. I was close. Now,
2003, Adelaide United was born.
yes,
The
yes.
A League, because we took 18 months hiatus, as you remember.
Yes,
there was no
and that's
competition.
Before you keep going, Angelo. Before you keep going, this is where I want to bring you into this time. Now, you started at Adelaide United as the marketing manager. Is that right?
2003, yes.
And then
the marketing director.
and then
was part of the board.
Yeah, and then you went across to becoming CEO after that. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, this is-
I was the first CEO when there was the 18-month hiatus, and we obviously had to have lots of meetings with Frank Lowy, John O'Neill, and Matt Carroll in Sydney. And obviously that was about the business plan, the strategic plans, how to get everything together, because it was a huge change from the old NSL to the A League. Frank Lowy, I'll never forget the red letter day. He said to everybody, and obviously I was at the meeting with the owner. He said, my friends, we've got an $8 million business, because we only had 8 teams, and each team had to submit with a $1 million fee, $500,000 guaranteed, and $500,000 had to be liquid money. So he said, we've got an $8 million business today, but we want to turn it into an $80 million business. And obviously today it's a lot bigger than that. But that was words that I'll never forget, because obviously some of the old clubs fell over because of the long-term financial viability. And I think when we talk about the second-tier competition, one of the biggest criteria is just that. And when we started Adelaide United, so I was involved with the old Adelaide United, which Tony was speaking about.
Yes.
And then obviously the new A League team, which was totally rebranded. Everybody changed their logos, like Sydney FC, Adelaide United. Obviously, I loved the first logo because I was right behind it, created that logo, the nice swoosh, South Australian colours, and then it had the Champions League ball. I'll send it to you one day.
Exactly.
And then obviously, John O'Neill said, look, we need to rebrand. We need to forget about the past. It was all about new, and obviously having people full-time, professional administration staff, players, and marketing people and all that sort of thing. So I'll never
Angelo freezing up there.
forget that. That was wrong. He was very good. He was a great man. And obviously John O'Neill came from rugby background, but,
Yep.
he was a bank merchant and a very strong businessman.
Yep.
So we kicked off the A-League, with a bang, because if you remember, the Socceroos qualified 2005
Yes.
for the first time since 1977. So there was that great boom, that great interest for the game. The whole country was galvanised, the game of football, because when John Aloisi scored that penalty, everybody went into a frenzy, not just in the stadium, but a little bit like the Matildas. Obviously, the Matildas are a lot bigger than that now, and we know. But that was a great springboard for the A-League, because the Socceroos went to Germany, they did well, and the A-League was born. And then obviously the first 3 or 4 years, I went over to Newcastle as well, as Kenny might know, when Con Constantine was the owner. So I was part of two A-League teams, and went over and that spread the blueprint that we used in Adelaide. But I must say, unashamedly, that we learnt a lot from Perth Glory. I know Kenny was talking about the fact that they need to reinvent themselves,
Yes.
but Perth Glory was a fabulous brand. When Nick Turner was there, he was running, flying at all colours with a new purple sort of shirt, which was different to all, but they used to get sellout crowds. And obviously, we went over there. Adelaide United went over there. Unashamedly, I'll say this: we went over and got the blueprint. Nick was very good. He said, "Here it is."
That was during. Sorry, there. Was that during the NSL at the time too? At the NSL, because you played them in the NSL, of course.
Yeah, we played them in the NSL. But when we started the A League, there was a lot of fraternity about this. Everybody was united. the owners, the CEOs. Obviously, this first meeting was the owner and CEO attending of each club. I attended with Gordon Picca, but Nick was very good at sharing stuff. He said, "Look, this is what we do. This is how we go to the membership. This is where we go. We go to the NPL clubs. For example, I'll give you one example. We used to get the bus, right? Take our team to the community. We didn't expect people to come and watch us train. We got the players in the bus. We took them to Modbury. We would take, and Tony would know this. We would take them to the southern part. And strategically, the whole year, 12 home games. Before each home game, we would take our team for one training night to an NPL side, throw the barbecue, and let me tell you, at Modbury, we had over 2,000 people turn up, and we gave 100 tickets, 150 tickets to the club, juniors, and all that sort of thing. So that was a fantastic marketing exercise, because that meant that Adelaide United went to you, came to your house, and said, "Guys, we are with you. You are with us. Come to our game." That warm invitation. And I think a lot of the A-League clubs, with all due respect, have taken their foot off the pedal. That they probably don't do this now.
Exactly.
And, you need to go to the community. The community engagement.
Oh.
I mean, Harry, you and I talk about this a lot.
Oh, we know that. We know that big time.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of those teams are becoming too elitist. They think, look, we're the A-League team. Look, the Wanderers were doing a fabulous. They did a great job, but something has gone wrong. You can't forget about the community. You can't forget about the simple people, the kids, the girls, and obviously, the Matildas. That's a world event. But the A-League clubs need to go back to doing the simple marketing strategies that don't cost a lot of money either. You can get a bus sponsored. We had a bus sponsored by Coach Lines of Australia. The bus was all paid for, not by Adelaide United, by a sponsor. We would go to Modbury. We would go to all of the other teams, Para Hills and the southern regions. Now that the names have changed, but
exactly.
By the end of the season, we had gone to all the strategic NPL state league teams. We had gone to all of them, and the kids that came and watched Adelaide United train at Para Hills or Modbury, and Tony Goodwin would know because he would have heard about it. It was all written in the papers. Great publicity. Obviously the charitable organisations, the players going to the Royal Adelaide Hospital. These are the simple things that, guys, these are the simple things that bring the crowd, the benevolent things that bring the people to the stadium. They say, look, these are great guys. And let me tell you, with all due respect, we did not have a team full of champions. I remember, if I can name one, Aaron Vesterveld, who played the NPL. But they were Adelaide boys. They weren't champions, of such. There was Carl Beers and the Aurelio Vidmars and the Ross Aloises and Valkanis and obviously, but we didn't have a lot of champions. But I can tell you, we built a hero status. Kenny would know this when all his autographs, he's a rock star and a footballer. I mean, Kenny's a rock star to me.
God,
I
looks
feel
like
long hair. He would know about it. Autographs.
I went to watch The Equalizer 3 last night. It was filmed in Naples. I was looking to see if I could see you as an extra in there.
Oh my God! I've got to go and see. Actually, you know what, guys? I tell you what.
Great movie, by the way, boys. Great movie.
I have to go and see this. I've got to go and see this, mate.
Yeah.
And this is
and I'll bet you Angelo knew every street and every alleyway in that movie. God. Guaranteed.
I have to see this. I've got to see this. I have to go and see this on the weekend. I'm
filmed in Naples. Yeah, you got to go and see it.
I got to go.
I'm waiting for Carlos. I'm waiting for Carlos because Carlos has got an allegiance with Italy.
Of course,
Tony, of course, you're involved too. But Carlos has got this allegiance. Obviously, his grandpa thing. There's a bit of Italian in there.
Yes.
I'm waiting for Carlos to come over.
Now,
to take him to a Napoli game.
Let me go.
Yeah, on my
here we go.
My grandfather from my mother's side, Giordano, he never spoke Italian to the grandkids.
My God.
They would only speak Italian, between themselves when they didn't want us to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I always remember him saying, prima vita Napoli dopo Maria. At first see Naples, then die.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And
I don't want to talk
then
about that.
once you see,
Please, no.
Harry,
Please, no.
Harry, Harry, you can tell the
Kenny's
boys.
alive.
I sent you the
Yes.
I sent you the photograph of the VAR office at the last Napoli game.
Oh, I enjoyed that. Mate, I laughed. I could not believe this, mate. The Pope is the VAR.
The Pope
is the VAR.
office.
Oh, my God, man. We need someone to dress up like that. I'll do it. I'll volunteer. I will volunteer and go to the ground and put VAR up there. I'll do it myself. Put a sign up there at one of the games and put VAR. I'll dress up as the Pope. How's that, boys? A bit now. I want to go.
He was caught in the office.
Oh, my God.
The last Napoli home game. It doesn't matter, mate. The Saudis are buying the Vatican anyway, so it
Oh
won't make
my
any difference.
God. I want to get back to Angelo for a sec. Angelo, I want to know when the NSL, we had a hiatus for one of the, of course, for 6 or 12 months. Was there anything that Frank Lowy did at the time with his committee to say, we want an expression of interest? What can you do different? We want proposals. What are you going to do? You were involved as a CEO for the transition of coming over to the A-League. What was that transition like, or was it very strict?
Well, it was. The Red Letter Day, let me tell you, was very emotional. Johnny Warren, the late Johnny Warren, he was there in a wheelchair.
Gee.
We had the launch in Sydney, and we spoke of the criterias. Now, you know, as you know, Harry, you and I talk a lot of fair and that sort of thing. You know, like the criterias, they haven't changed much, and I'm sure that James Johnson will be going through. As you know, they're going through the last phase now.
Yes, they are.
They've completed the second phase, which was at a deadline 28th of August. Now they're going through the final phase of selecting the teams that have submitted in accordance with the criteria. The criteria then and today will be this: to have a strong financial viability, okay, to have long-term viability, to have geographic location for reach. You know, for example, you guys were talking about, I think it was Keddy talking about Western United and then talking about MacArthur.
Oh, boy.
I don't know who selected those teams, because let me tell you, when do you actually grow the membership base? When you win a championship. Western United has won. Their crowds are 3,000-4,000.
They won
3,000-4,000, maybe 2,000 if they're lucky. Okay? Now, I'll go on. The criteria: membership base, a fan base with opportunity for expansion. That should be a criteria. The stadium capacity, the stadium regularities. For this promotion relegation, right? And that team gets promoted to the A-League. Do they have a stadium capacity? That's a very strong one. The organisational structure. We talked about semi-professional. We talked about how in the old NSL there was a lot of volunteers. May God bless them. You know, but you need to have professional people running the club. Okay, business and commercial relationships. It's not about playing the NPL, the State League, or the second, third division. You need to have strong business and commercial relationships that will actually help you with the long-term viability. You know, like sponsorship. You know, you don't want to sponsor one sponsor. We know that this has happened to certain clubs. I won't mention. When they had a president, one sponsor only, he decided to leave. Then they were stuck. They had nobody. So you need 10 strong sponsors. If one leaves, you got long-term viability. Mm-hmm. You can continue. So never rely on just one big $1 million, $2 million sponsor. So business commercial relationships is very important. The media public relations, very strong. I'll just mention the fact that some of the clubs have taken their foot off the pedal. May God bless them. Kenny just mentioned, you know, Perth and Newcastle and MacArthur and Western United. And you need public relations to actually profile the brand. We're talking about brand. I mean, look at the Matildas. They've become an iconic brand now. Before, they were one of the strong brands like the Socceroos and the Matildas. Now, everybody knows, you can't argue the fact that the Matildas are the biggest sold sporting brand in the history of Australian sport. There's no argument.
They are.
I mean, anybody that says no, you know. And finally, my favourite, I've just read the 10 Commandments, 10 10 ideas here, 10 clauses, 10 things, the criterions. The final one, marketing, advertising, publicity.
Exactly.
Because the marketing goes with the membership base, with the fan base. How are you going to grow that? Okay. I think that Adelaide United is a unique brand, one team town. Now, it'll be interesting to see if there's a team that's selected, as a second tier competition. I don't know what they're going to call it. They still haven't got a name.
I do.
Whether,
I have the name. I have the name
yeah,
already. I got the NSL2. Of course, it's NSL2. I don't care what anybody says. It's NSL2. That is it.
Guys, can we? I mean, I know we keep raising this, we keep talking about it, but they have got no affiliation at all with the A-League. The A-League wants nothing to do with them. There is no promotion to the A-League. Don't even think that's on the table. It doesn't exist. 2034, they can be relegation. That is 11 years away. I saw the original expressions of interest for the, let's call it, it's like we'll call it an NPL National League, because that's what it predominantly is, an NPL National League, or how do you say it? It really is falling into being like the old NSL.
NSL2.
It's the same teams. But what I will say to you is that the original application or expressions of interest that 36 teams paid $5,000 to say, there was nothing mentioned about $500,000 bond. Subsequently, you now have 6 teams with possibly 8 teams that are progressing with it, and all these other teams have fallen by the wayside because they can't possibly come up with $500,000 non-refundable bonds. Non-refundable.
Can you understand?
So the yardstick and the yardstick that they're setting is beyond the majority of these teams that have made that. Sutherlandshire, they're not going. Forget it. It's just not going to happen. And so we're predominantly the 8 teams that we're talking about, with the exception of one new team. You've got, I think, it's Brisbane, but Brisbane Lions, which is Dutch, which is the old NSL.
They're not going in.
Apia, South Melbourne. They're all NSL teams.
That's right.
So all we've done is we've gone full. When we talk about full circle in life, we've gone full circle in life. The only thing by accident they're probably going to get right is they're going to play it in winter, April through to October, which won't clash with the A-League, luckily, because that would certainly have an impact. But can it go off the ground with 8 teams?
No. Kenny, there'll be more than 8. I've been speaking to people the last few days. There's a few little, I can't say a few things at the moment. Angelo, I just want to bring Carlos for a sec on here right now, because he's been to some of these teams in New South Wales. Right now, how I see this, Carlos, is this. You're going to games in the NPL. Of course, you've been to the NPL games. I mean, they're not getting any people there. And to me, from what I've heard too, is that some clubs who are putting their proposal, we're at the proposal stage right now, okay? What's going to happen here? I know it's 8 teams. I know it's 8 teams now from today speaking to someone, and I'm seeing that there could be another 2 more. So, Carlos, you know yourself, the survival of these clubs, even though we say that, nobody's going to the NPL clubs, they don't want to go. It's a dead competition. Nobody wants to go to these games. And you, Carlos, have been to these games. How many people turn up? What sort of position are they in to say, we're not making enough money, we're going to go broke anyway? So give them an opportunity, Carlos, to play in a different competition, to bring people from interstate as well to see their teams as well. So what do you think of that? You've seen the clubs in Sydney.
Well, I was at the Apia Sydney FC Australia Cup game, and I was speaking to an Apia committee person high up, and so far 11 clubs have posted on social media that they're in this final phase. Other clubs have chosen to remain silent, like South Hobart and a few others. But the Olympics, Marconi, Apia, they all have put media releases out how excited it is to be in the final phase. Now, assuming that Apia, Olympic, and a few others from New South Wales State, we could say that safely 4 clubs from New South Wales Premier League may go into the national second division. Then they will then field a team under 23 in NPL. So the question I asked this APIA person, who's going to fund the NPL under 23 side, which will be obviously a feeder club or feeder side for the national second division? I said, well, at the moment, the players are getting between 500 to 1,000 per game. 300, 500, 1,000 is not a, it's a ballpark figure. So the NPL sides will get $100 a game for that. Then I asked the APIA guy, is there a succession plan? Because Tony Rossetti, the APIA lifelong member, has literally bankrolled the club. He's not going to be around forever. And he said, oh, his son is taking over, but his son might have a different idea because daddy had a passion that, you know. So the question is, whoever is chosen, I think there is an appetite for people to see something new. And I think once there is something new, and as Angelo said, is properly marketed, the bus and a barbecue doesn't cost any money, if anything. I think people will come to watch the games because at the moment, Olympic, and they're lucky to get 300 people. Apia against Sydney, St. George City FA, where they were presented with a trophy, I think at best about 1,500 people. And when you go into the Apia John Marston Lounge, you know, the VIPs and the press don't even get a free drink. You've got to buy your own free drink. So there's a lot of learning to be done. And whoever is chosen will have to have sound, deep pockets because we cannot afford to fail like Collingwood and Carlton. And I think there will be a 5-year consolidation period to allow these clubs to grow financially and professionally. And after that, I think the A-League licenses will be renegotiated along the way to allow for promotion. But there have to be a 5-year period where the 12 or 14 clubs are allowed to grow financially and professionally.
And of course, I want to bring Tony on as well. I'll bring you on, Tony, because there's only one team there's only one national team in the national competition, the A-League in South Australia. And of course, Angelo was involved in that decision in getting him in there. But to actually have a team to play in the NSL2, let's say, guys, NSL2, to have a team there, to have support for a second division team would be enormous for the state, enormous for the NPL. They don't get many people. As so many presidents said to me, Harry, the NPL is a dead competition. And I've got something here right now to tell you guys. I've got some research I've done as well here about this. There is no people. There's no excitement. They don't make money, Tony. There's no money in this. From what I know is there's a grand final in Victoria next week between Avondale and of course South Melbourne. And from what I know is that somebody said they're paying $250,000, $300,000 for players' wages for the club to keep going. And they're only getting $20,000 back for a reward if they win the final. Now that is ridiculous. And of course, this opportunity to have a second division, Tony, to have a second team in South Australia, how do you feel?
Well, look, I think we need something, especially if it's going to be in those winter months. Who it's going to be, God only knows, because Adelaide City, I believe, are pulled out. So, West Adelaide haven't put the interest in. Football SA has got a interest. But as to what that interest is going to be very interesting. So the principals that I heard talking were all of the thought that if they're putting a side in, then they're there to represent all teams that are registered with Football SA in South Australia. So is that a conflict of interest? But then I've heard different sense that they may be a representative side, so they can actually be there to have a licence in case a team wants to play under it. Or I have a combination of clubs that want to have a licence to play under it. But I think the interest would be there if it was in the winter months.
Yes.
But I guess the money in South Australia at all the junior clubs and the NSL clubs or NPL clubs, I just don't know whether the actual coin's actually there. I mean, Adelaide City, would have been the absolute pinnacle of the club to be in it. And they don't get that many fans at their local games, but I really believe there'd probably be a lot of closet fans that would literally come out and support it if they got their chance. But I'm not sure where they're going to get the fans from unless it's, I think there'll be an interest there primarily, but you've got to capture the soul. Adelaide United, when they first started, captured the soul. They captured what the fans were desperate for, and they did it perfectly. And that continues today. I'd really like to see a successful side in that winter competition. How it's going to run, there's not a lot of chatter going around, which makes it tough because you go to all the different NPL clubs and no one's really talking about it. It's crazy. You can ask questions, but of course, I guess those with the cards to the chest aren't going to give you many answers.
Now, let me go to you, Kenny, right now, and I'm going to go right back to the beginning when the NPL was formed. The NPL was formed to give opportunities for clubs who finished on top to play in a national competition, a national round-robin competition. Now, this is what I found out. Okay, the NPL National, of course, they finished on top. They and there was no promotion. There was nothing happening. I'd followed the Heidelberg United up to Brisbane and saw them play a few years ago. I said, "What's going on here? There's nobody at the game." They're talking here. You finished on top. NPL played knockout competition tournament. No promotion for the NPL National. No advertising. Too late at night. No prize money. Just a medal trophy. And of course, George Katsakis came back and he said, "Well, we went up to Brisbane." And we got nothing for it. No people, no nothing. So that was brought in to look after these clubs like a national NPL. They've canned it. It never worked. And this is where they will not follow that type of knockout competition because they want a season competition, Kenny. And of course, there is something happening. I have spoken to a few presidents, but I can't talk much about it because it's all in the system at the moment. But Kenny, did you go to the those NPL Nationals? You saw nobody there. Absolutely nobody.
Mate, like there's an old saying: if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? It's a duck. So I keep harping back to. I mean, Angelo made the point that you can do all these things, but if you don't promote it and you don't have media and you don't have TV, so basically, if they did go back to the 2 or 3 teams from New South Wales, 2 or 3 teams from Melbourne.
Yes.
2 teams from Brisbane, 2 teams from Adelaide, going into a national Super League at the end of the leagues.
Yes.
If they promoted it and advertised it and got the media behind it, it would work. Because if they don't do that with this, it won't work anyway. Right. If they don't get TV, I think they will get TV.
They will.
I think probably SBS might get behind it. I think Harry, Harry's obviously on the ball coming up.
Yes.
And I'm sure Harry might get involved. But my point originally is that you can't mislead people and teams through a process. You've got to be open and honest. If they had said in the original prospectus, and I saw the original prospectus, and it wasn't on there was no talk about anything about a $500,000 bond. Subsequently, I don't know where this 11 teams have came from. I've been told from a very good source, 6 with a potential 2 more is 8. I don't know where the other 3's come from because it certainly hasn't been announced as far as I'm aware. So they're sitting at potentially 8 at the moment. The cost involved was going to be between 4 and 5 million. Another $500,000 bond, so it's rising by the day. Subsequently, that's why Adelaide City's pulled out. The teams are looking at it and going, and the great point that Carlos made, if Tony Rashidi stopped tomorrow from Apia, where would they go? Where would they bring the funds in? They don't have a club anymore. They rely on Tony. Tony's the heartbeat of Apia. There's a lot of good people there, don't get me wrong, but he's the driving force of Apia. Always has been. Always has been. And it goes back to the old school. Olympic, the John Constantines, the Harry Zantis, and a bit what we were talking about earlier on with sponsorship. We used to have Patra orange juice. We used to have Saziki.
Yes.
We had about 7 or 8 different sponsors.
I'm hungry. You're making me hungry, Kenny. Sorry, you're making me hungry. Please don't talk about stuff.
But the reality nowadays is you need a major sponsor. Every club needs a major sponsor. We've got this piddly, with the Socceroos. We've got the worst sponsorship in the world. When you look at what we've got, what a disaster that is. So what
say
chance have we got at NPL level of getting a major sponsor? Very, very difficult, because that sets the bar when the Socceroos can only get Subway. It sends a message to people. It sends a message to the corporate world that, well, if the Socceroos can only get, and and the Matildas never got that much flash. I mean, we got a result from a perspective of the competition went really well here. Look, specifically, we finished fourth. All right, we never had to qualify for the competition. There's a lot of there's a lot of fantasy went on with the competition that blew it to a perspective that we can move the goalposts a little bit. But the end result was we've got ourselves Matildas having a great sort of public profile, and that's fantastic.
Yes,
fantastic. But as Angelo would know, there's a bar gets set by your premium teams. They set the bar. They set the bar with sponsorship. So if you get a crappy sponsorship with your top elite, then the teams below are not going to get better than that. That's how I see it. It's Angelo's. That's his forte. He might be able to sort of put some sunshine on that.
Angelo, are you getting ready to come back to this country and run the second tier, please? Because I think you'd be pretty good at what you said before. Was like, why is this guy lost to the game in Italy? He should be over here, apparently. Angelo, is there any secret you can tell us or anything that you know? I'm putting you straight on here right now.
Well, look, I thank you for all of that. I think that in all seriousness, Kenny, he covered a lot of things, but what we got to understand is that what the Matildas did, even though they didn't have to qualify, what the Matildas have done is we need to take advantage of that.
Yes.
The only way we can take advantage of that, they've profiled the sport. They've actually, like smashed their television ratings. They're playing in winter against AFL games. And I don't care what anybody says. I know a couple of people have said, look, but that's a world event. Hang on a minute. The World Cup in Qatar was held in November because of the climate. Now, the Matildas were playing in winter against AFL games. They didn't cancel their games. They just moved them. And we actually had an extraordinary wave right across the country. And what I want to say, the only way we're going to be improving things is if we unite. Now, Kenny said the APL is not interested in the second tier competition. You can't have a fragmented organisation, APL, the FA, like the second tier competition comes under the FA run the Socceroos and the Matildas, and the APL run the A-League.
Correct.
And
correct.
This promotion relegation, for example, I know the guys had a first phase expression of interest. You had 26 teams, right? Harry, everybody, or Tony, everybody knows, exactly. Carlos, teams that put in the expression of interest. Now, we've done the second phase, which is the request of proposal. So all of those teams have put in a proposal. And now we are at the final phase. And James Johnson has come out publicly and said, I want 10 teams. But he has said, given the confidentiality of the nature of the request of proposal, FA will not disclose the entities that have made the submissions. So he knows which teams are going to be crossing that line. And what I want to say is that he said, I want a robust sort of framework. I want a long-term viability. Then we got to talk about money. Where is the money going to come from? If we have 10 teams that are going to be the second tier competition, James Johnson has said, I don't know, we're going to have home and away games. We might adopt a like Champions League format where the NPL teams may influence this, the entities that are going to play in the second tier competition. So he's not sure at the moment, and I hope that each of those 10 teams, you guys said 11, Kenny says 8, let's say it's 10, right? 10 teams. Who's going to fund those teams? And you're not talking about playing 1 year. And then we don't know about promotion relegation. I mean, my personal thoughts are that James Johnson hopefully is well prepared for this. If the 10 teams come in, those 10 teams want to have assurance that they are going to have a chance to get promoted. Now you can't say you got to stay. You got to just play for the next 5 years, play in the competition,
No.
and build your brand and membership base and fan base. I mean, who's going to do that? Who's going to invest 3 or 4 million a year, right, for 5 years? Let's say that's 15 million, and not have a chance to get promoted to the A League, and to have a chance to have a crack at the Asian, because the A League obviously is the Asia Champions League.
I'll stop you there.
So,
I'll stop you there. Sorry, Angelo. Apparently, they get this running up and running. There's one team. You finish top in the second division. You have a go in the Asian Champions League. The first team. That's one. The one that finishes on top goes into the Asian Champions League. Yes, they've spoken about that already. They've done that on there.
do you get promoted, Harry? Do you get promoted to the A League?
Well, not right now. But I heard 3 years. 3 years. 3 years.
They can't. Look,
I know, Kenny. You said that. I know, but I've heard 3 years.
Mate, it's factual, contracted. 2034, when the licenses were sold, they can't get relegated till 2034. It's in the license agreement. If they're really serious, any of these NPL teams, mate, if they're going to spend $5.5–6 million to play in the second tier, I would suggest to you that you'd be able to buy Newcastle for that kind of money. I would suggest to you you'd be able to buy MacArthur for that kind of money. So if we're really talking about seriously wanting to play in the top competition, don't go. Let's not go in the middle, man. Let's go straight to the horse's mouth. Newcastle would certainly. They're not going to get funded forever with the 3 clubs. I mean, at some stage, Wanderers, Sydney FC, and Melbourne City are going to say enough is enough. It's been 4 seasons now that they've technically been in administration. Technically, so.
Well, look, what I was going to say, Kenny, you're right. Just quickly, Newcastle are owned by 3 NSL A-League clubs, and one of the A-League clubs, I'm going to say this, Sydney FC, has got financial problems.
Yep.
I'm sure, I know, you guys will hear about it. There's Sydney FC, you've got Perth Glory, Newcastle, MacArthur, Western United. Kenny, you mentioned those teams. They're struggling, and you're right. That is a fabulous idea. If someone like Tony Rashidi is going to be waiting 5 years to go into the A-League, why doesn't he just buy Newcastle United?
Absolutely.
So,
I'm quite sure Brisbane will be up for grabs, and I'm quite sure
they're very close.
Perth is going to get bought by someone because it's in administration. So somebody, I think Carlos will want maybe.
We know.
I think
the Pelligra Group.
I think the only thing is stopping Apia from buying the Newcastle license is their attachment to Leichhardt itself. Apia next year will be 70 years old, playing at Lambert Park since 1954. So to me, why Olympic doesn't just break the piggy bank and buy Newcastle or MacArthur is their attachment to this, is its base in the inner city. And I think that's what's stopping Apia or anyone else buying MacArthur, because Apia Leichhardt is rooted in its history in Leichhardt, not in Newcastle, not in MacArthur.
Yeah, but we've done it before. I mean, we moved from North Sydney up to the Central Coast, so you can move the franchise. That's not unheard of. I mean, before I came to Australia, I signed for San Antonio Thunder, and before I got on the plane, they sold the franchise to Team Hawaii and they cancelled their contract. Yep. So it happens all the time. Don't worry about that. They can move. They can typically.
I think it's an emotional.
Oh yeah, but there's no way in the world Apia can play at Lambert Park and generate enough fans to sustain an NPL second division.
Funny,
because what does it hold? 7,000 max.
Yeah, Kenny, could you see them naming up north Apia Newcastle? Could you see that happen?
No. What I'm saying is they buy the franchise and they come down here and play at Leichhardt Oval, or what I'm saying is they have to move the franchise.
That's right.
And Newcastle will have to then rebuild and start again. I'm not saying that Apia moves up there and plays. What I'm saying is that they buy the franchise, and the franchise comes to, and what Angelo says as well, and what Carlos says, Olympic. I mean, even Marconi. I mean, Marconi's probably the most structurally best set up team to do it. You know, because they've got the stadium, they can extend that stadium if they really wanted to invest, and they've got a fantastic social club to back them. And to a certain extent, I suppose so has Sydney Croatia or Sydney United, whatever you want to call them. You know, they've got a really vibrant club. So any of them, I just don't understand why they don't go and make an offer for these licenses.
I know.
Because they're there to be taken. And I'll bet you the Perth license goes for 5 or 6 million. I'll bet you it's nothing like the 12 or 14 million that was paid for it.
I can give you. I put Tony on a minute. I give you a hint right now. A few years ago, when we had the COVID situation, and of course we're talking about Wellington Phoenix playing out of Wollongong and getting all this stuff, and then all of a sudden we get they're talking to South Melbourne and saying, well, I don't know if you guys heard this, saying that we'll play as Wellington in. Well, let's go halves on the licence. Of course, Wellington plays as Wellington in New Zealand, and they come in with the South Melbourne stuff here as they play at South Melbourne. So that's to buy the half licence. The chairman said no, straight out. So what you're saying, Kenny, is buy the thing, bring it to Sydney, and that should be a fix. But this is where Wellington didn't want that. They didn't want it.
South Melbourne could buy Western United.
Oh, they can. They can.
I mean, yeah, of course they could. Yeah,
they can.
I mean, at least then, or have some sort of amalgamation there. You know, I mean, there's all these things that will take them straight into the competition that they want to be in, and I think that would be more feasible for the more elite NPL teams. Doesn't help the sort of, I suppose, the growing ones that want to create a new club, but the ones that shout and ball about getting into the A-League, for me, that's what would be the perfect scenario. Yeah. And I mean, we've said it before. You know, it'll revitalise that competition, because you've got Newcastle that are really just selling. They're like, they're like, the Tigers up here in rugby league. Yeah, they're just cellar dwellers now. Right. They don't compete. They're getting funded, and I still scratch my head. I don't know how FIFA allow it, that 3 clubs that play in the same competition can be funding a team that's in the competition. It's the most ridiculous concept I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well,
that's think Man City owning Burnley and West Ham.
Let me, Tony, and I'll tell you this, Tony, I'm sure you might have seen the Adelaide 36ers, the basketball team, of course. Adelaide 36ers, you've been there. We had problems a few years ago with the league there. Mate, nobody was going. Is that right, Tony? And all of a sudden, this guy by the name of Larry Kesselman turns up, and he puts his money where his mouth is. I'm going to buy the whole league. So he buys the whole league, and all of a sudden, during the summer, the stadiums are packed because he bought the league. Now, the thing about this is we need someone to invest in the league itself. The league itself to keep the game going, because I tell you what, mate, and I know you've seen the games, the basketball games, of course, in Adelaide being full again, Tony, because the way he's charging people at the game, and I'll tell you right now, 17,000 people to watch the Illawarra, what do they call themselves, the Eagles?
Illawarra Hawks.
That's right, 17,000 people unheard of, 17,000. I could not believe this a year ago. And the thing is to say to me that we can't sell the league off and make and bring that league up even more, where there's no funding for the A-League, where we need more money for the A-League, and they can't even afford to keep the clubs up there with funding and keep them going. And we can't even get players. We can't get players to come from overseas, because they're all being bought by the Saudis, the Chinese, of course the MLS in America. For God's sakes, guys, it's time that league was sold, just like what happened to Larry Kesselman. He bought the league and he's charging $10 a head. Now, Tony, you know the LA 36ers was going broke, is that right?
Yeah, because when Adelaide United are playing in their season and the basketball's on, it's a freaking nightmare trying to find a park around.
There you go. See, there you go.
Yeah, so it's packed. The traffic around that 7:30 to 10:30 mark at night. But between both sports, I mean, Adelaide United's getting some really good crowds. So, and the basketball obviously was getting massive crowds as well. So, but anyway, it's bringing people to the city, and that's what I guess the area wants: more sponsorship, more customer. The pubs, clubs, and everything around that area are doing good business and they like it.
And there you go, Angelo. Angelo, you being, of course, the CEO at the time, Adelaide 36ers as well. You had, of course, two national teams at the time, Adelaide 36ers and Adelaide United. And of course, we're talking about the AFL and whatever. But that was during the winter. But did you compete with them as well? Did you compete with them? What was it like then competing with Adelaide 36ers? More people going to those games?
Well, I think initially we shocked South Australia with the crowds that we were getting, and but we had our own slice of the market. Obviously, it was the sleeping giant in South Australia. Now, sleeping giant they call it in Australia, but in South Australia, we didn't have a South Australian based team that everybody could follow, like Mini Crows.
Yes,
Mini Crows. With the South Australian colours. And what happened? We hit the market. We hit the market straight away. We had samples. We did sampling, marketing. We went to the community, as I said.
Yes.
And then we got to sell out crowds. And we had problems with the parking. As Tony would know, we had to make a deal with the entertainment centre, which is only about 300 metres from the stadium, where we get... And obviously, we utilised that so well. We used to get singers, like that. We're going to perform at the entertainment centre at Hindmarsh, prior to the game. So we would promote both things, and that was a marketing idea. Obviously John Farnham was singing there at one stage. We contacted him and said, where would you like to do a song at Hindmarsh, a couple of days before you do your concert? Obviously a great promotion for him. We had Leighton Hewitt when he was at his heights. All of this, we went right crossover to all the other sports, invited them there, like the AFL, Port Power, the Crows. We had a shoot for a goal competition. Our problem was the parking. I think that's been resolved now, but if they improve the capacity at Hindmarsh, they increase it to 25,000, 30,000. Because if we're going to bid for the World Cup, right, in 2034, as I've always mentioned, FIFA will build your stadiums. And Adelaide will be in the box seat. They've only got a stadium that's got capacity 20. FIFA requires 8 stadiums, capacity 40,000, and 4 stadiums, capacity 60 to 80,000, obviously to hold the grand final.
Yep.
And we know the next time we're going to have 48 teams. So, but anyway, the capacity is a problem in Adelaide. I think Adelaide could build a stadium of 40,000, and thank you very much. If we do win that bid, Adelaide would be in favour of building the stadium. And all of the other cities, we don't need the AFL to say, look, we won't give you the stadium. We won't take the sponsorship off the fence. We won't do this, we won't do that. FIFA will come in like a bulldozer. Nobody knows just how powerful they are. If the government get together with the APL and the FA, which is my dream, James Johnson, get together with the APL, go to the government and let's bid for the 2034 FIFA Men's World Cup. And I think then we don't need anybody. We don't need to ask any favours from the AFL or the rugby union who say, we won't give you the stadium, we won't do this, we won't. FIFA will come in. Look, let's not forget that the Matildas World Cup, the Matildas, actually the return and investment, and Anthony Albanese will tell you that, 7.67 billion in terms of tourism.
Exactly.
And the return for this event that we've held in Australia. It wasn't even held in Australia 100%, Australia, New Zealand. But in Australia, it meant 7.67 billion in terms of tourism and all of the other expenditure, like consuming, consummation, like what Kenny was saying before,
yes.
Pubs being open, like all of that sort of thing. Guys, we have to bid for the 2034 World Cup. It'll be a tremendous promotion anyway. Just bidding for it.
I think we got to wake up Carlos for a sec. Carlos, you there? There he is.
Yeah.
So it's way past your bedtime. Go on, Carlos.
I think with the World Cup, and then we did very well with 32 teams and 2 countries. Now the World Cup is, I lost 48 or 42 teams. The new World Cup.
48. Saying 48.
48 teams.
48, 3 countries.
Yeah, so we need a 3rd country. A lot of people say Malaysia, Singapore, but that's an 8-hour flight. So that's problematic. Where US, Canada, and Mexico, it's 4 hours and you're there. So yes, we're good. So FIFA will build us a stadium, but I don't think we have enough room with New Zealand to build the stadia needed. We need to find another partner. Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia is hosting the under-17 World Cup. Hopefully they don't flare up with the Israel issue, because they lost the under-20s last minute because they refused to have Israel play in Indonesia. So we need a third country to help us with the stadium, and then we need to convince FIFA that we have shown that the women have shown that it's viable, that the ratings in Europe and the US did really well because we schedule the games in the afternoons here, midday, and so the Europeans and the Americans watch the game in the drives. So the third country is the issue because of the travelling that, if you're England, did you want to go to Singapore, backtrack to New Zealand, or Perth to Auckland, the longest football journey in the world every time that Perth plays Wellington. So I think it can be done. I think logistics are an issue. We need a third country or more stadia. I'm not sure there will be the money or the goodwill to build more stadia when we have queues in the hospital.
Yes.
We have issues with aged care. So a lot of people say, well, if you're going to spend $100, $200 million, look at my grandparents struggling in aged care. So I think we need to be bold and creative, and maybe invite a third country close by and get around the logistics of travelling.
That's
I
right.
think the danger though is, guys, that the World Cup, I mean, I don't know if it's finalised with these 48 teams yet. I haven't actually seen the final draft, whether it's been accepted. But diluting the World Cup to 48 teams, you're diluting the elite teams. You're allowing teams in that are going to get smashed. Who knows?
That's exactly, Kenny. That's exactly what you're saying. Apparently,
and it's also the issue you're going to have. You're going to come up against the elite clubs who, when the World Cup's on, you can't do it over 4 weeks. Only 48 teams, so it's going to be 6 or 7 weeks. You're going to have to stop all the competitions worldwide for that period of time. So there's lots of things that it will change the landscape of the game if they go that way. And I mean, for me, I'm old-fashioned. I like it where you've got the group stages, as in the qualifying stages, to qualify for the World Cup. If you don't make it, you don't make it. I mean, Angelo, obviously, Italy's not made it, Scotland's not made it, for many years, which is devastating for me. But that's the passion, and that's what happens in the World Cup. Yep. When you go 48 teams and you practically get all the elite teams are practically guaranteed to come, then I don't think it's a World Cup anymore for me. I mean, I just think that you need to keep it, and you need to keep it consolidated, like what you just said. That how are you going to travel, send teams for a 7 and 8 hour flight to go from Sydney to Singapore to play a game? It has, for us, it's going to be geographically a nightmare.
We can only wait and see what happens at the next World Cup in America, Canada,
can I just
and Mexico.
mention something off a tangent?
Yes.
November the 13th is 50 years since we qualified for the first World Cup. So if people are not aware of that, and part of the reason we're probably sitting here today is because of they were the pioneers from a perspective of the game dramatically kicked because it was the first World Cup we qualified for 74. I suppose the point I'm going to make is the fact that I'm sitting here is because of these guys, because the 74 World Cup then allowed us to have a national league, the first true national league in this country, through these guys. Now, Clover Moor is having a huge gathering for them in Sydney. But at the moment, the FA's actually isn't doing anything for them, which I find really quite worrying for me. Because if we're going to start, we're talking about the Matildas. But the Matildas, we wouldn't have the Matildas if it wasn't for these guys.
Yes.
You know, we wouldn't have any of this relatively without these guys taking us to that level. So, you know, I mean, I know obviously Sydney's doing that, Clovermore's doing this, but the FA have certainly got to step up to the plate and do something special. We've already lost Raleigh, we've already lost Manfred, we've lost Otti,
Jimmy Mackay.
I think we've lost four of the original.
Jimmy Mackay as well.
And Jimmy Mackay. We've already lost them, you know, some of them. So I think the country's got to really stand up, and you know the FA's got to stand up, and they've got to celebrate these guys in the way they should be celebrated. So I just thought I'd mention it.
Yes.
November the 13th, 50 years since we qualified for the first World Cup, and if there's an opportunity to get behind anything that comes along, please try and do it.
Exactly. If you're in
I'd
Sydney,
like to see a promotional video on that. I think it would be,
yes,
some sort of little, even if it's to music or whatever, but there's something that would honour them, because it's like you said. It's you look at weeks ago when we had the original Matildas, it wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for them.
Correct.
And the same as our game, it wouldn't have been what it is if it wasn't for those guys.
Once again, Angelo, promoting something again. That's where it's got to happen. Like with anything about the game, even promoting something like this, the 74. You said it yourself. Promoting exposure for the game, more stuff. We don't see this much anymore.
Yeah.
We've got to do something.
No. I think if James Johnson and all those people that the APL, this is where we've gone wrong. Okay, and there's a lot of things that can be done off the field. Okay, mentioned significant. It's not 1974 World Cup. We qualified. We actually qualified in November. Then we participated in the World Cup.
Yep.
50 years since qualification, and then it's 50 since played in Germany in the World Cup. What I want to say is that out of that 74 World Cup, like Kenny said, the NSL started. Mm-hmm. Then, 25 years later, in 2005, we qualified again since 1977. Mm-hmm. The A-League was born. Now the
we're losing Angelo. Angelo, we're losing you. Sorry about that. Losing your link. Where are you, Angelo? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, we just lost you for a sec.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, we're never going to get this opportunity again where the Socceroos participated in the World Cup in November. Then 6-7 months later, we had the Matildas playing. We had 6 months of talk football. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that culminated in the sellout crowds and the ratings and all that, the iconic brand now of the Matildas. But my question is, what are we going to do with this stuff that's happened? We bottled it inside. Now we've got it. How are we going to now use that to get bigger crowds in the A-League and perhaps the NPL, the Women's League? I think this is where the brainstorming should start with James Johnson and Townsend from the APL. Get together and start talking about how you're going to use this fantastic opportunity. Because, that's not going to happen again unless we have the FIFA Men's World Cup in 2034. But we've had 1 year where we are the talk of the world. I mean, you talk about Ange Postecoglou.
Oh.
I know we're going off the topic a little bit. Ange Postecoglou, the Matildas, the soccer. We are the talk of the world right now. Ange is a great promotion for us too. But do the radio stations and the television promote him?
No, they don't. No, I
don't know.
No, there's nothing happening. Only in England it's happening. It's happening in England right now. They're talking about the game in Australia as well, and he's a great ambassador for the game in the Premier League, and that's fantastic to see that the coaches now. A lot of coaches have been looked at in Australia, which Ange has opened up the door a little bit now in England, of course.
Mate, funny you said that, opening up the door, because to my Tottenham, I've got lots of mates who are my Tottenham fans, but they've actually just reopened up the trophy room at Tottenham.
Gee.
In anticipation of getting something, and they found Lord Lucan in there.
Gee. Unbelievable, Kenny.
If anyone knows who Lord Lucan is.
Oh, my God. Mate,
It's been that long since anyone's been in there.
Jesus, unbelievable. That's just unheard. That's unheard of in this country. Guys, we're going to have to leave it there. We can talk a lot. We can talk until the cows come in, and they can actually talk until the cows come in, and they can milk them for red milk as far as I'm concerned. That's my own bloody joke. There you go. But that's the thing. But anyway, look, guys, thank you for coming on, and we'd like to welcome one of our special guests who've actually joined our group and our show tonight. By watching it, Peter Philopoulos. Thank you for coming on and watching our show from the FA, from Football Australia. He's come on the show and he's watching right now. Thank you for coming on and joining us. Fantastic to have you part of our group as well. If we can get you on our show as well to talk about the situation with the FA and what's going with the games in the future and everything. So, guys, thank you for joining me tonight. Carlos, of course, it's been a pleasure again. My mentor, of course, the gentleman from Italy there, and of course, Tony Goodwin, of course, the Socceroo dad, and of course, Great Scott. It's Kenny Wilson. There you go, guys.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Good
Thank
night,
you
everyone.
next week. Thank you for joining us, guys. It's been one of these big shows tonight.
Look after
There you
yourself,
go.
boys.
Yeah, Angelo.
Bye, guys.
See you,
Thanks, guys, for joining us tonight. Football Let's, guys, was live tonight, guys. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you. We'll be back next week with some more special stuff happening on Football Let's. Don't forget, it's our way, the highway in Football Let's. Thank you. Good night, guys. Thank you. Check it out. Feel it. Check it out, guys. Welcome right now. If you just joined us, you've just joined us on Football Let's. It's the end of the game. Thank you, guys. Thank you. See you next week, Monday at 8:30 p.m. Same time, same place, same bat station. Same colours as Batman. There you go. Hey, the cup of life. This is the one. Now is the time. Don't never stop. We should have known. Gotta be strong. We should have known right from the top. And when you feel the heat, the world is at your feet. No one can hold you back if you really want it. I see it in your eyes. You want the cup of life, Roger Sleeman. Now that the day's here, you're gonna get it. Do you really want it? Thank you, boys, for coming on tonight. See you next week, guys. Here we go. Here we go. Ali, Ali, Ali. Good night, guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week, next 8:30 p.m. with a great show again next week. Thank you, guys. Good night, everyone. Hi guys, Harry Sunday here, letting you know that there's a apparel company that supports the game that you love. It's called ThereIsOnlyOneFootball.com, guys. They've got all sorts of stuff, from caps, t-shirts, water bottles, all sorts of accessories, even for your mobile phone. All that sporting stuff you can wear anywhere you want to wear it, guys. That's right. And don't forget the website it's on, ThereIsOnlyOneFootball.com.
There is only one football.